killing brush. I got him at gunpoint.
They're pulling them out.
911. Advise ready for camp.
Welcome to another episode of War Stories. I'm Tom.
I'm Chuck.
And this week, we have got some stories that we decided we wanted to cover because we've gotten enough messages about them and inundated on social media with them. And so we're going to go do some current event type stuff this episode and forego a guest this week. So I'm looking forward to it. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, these two are doozies. And unfortunately, stuff like this happens. And it happens, and not in each circumstance to the T, but to a point far too often, where just certain things happen that should hopefully be avoided, but sometimes they don't. They aren't avoided. Sometimes
they're no-win scenarios, and sometimes, with no-win scenarios, the best thing you can do is learn your lesson and try and figure out how to handle it better next time. But first, I wanted to talk about a message that we got sent from a listener. And I think we'll have to actually do a little research and get a guest on to discuss this. So I got a picture, and it was clearly not like a news photo. This was a picture taken with somebody's cell phone camera or digital camera, whatever it was. And it was a highway patrol officer. And he had his hair completely shaved all the way around on the sides. And the hair on the top was pulled back like Jason Newsted in 90s Metallica. And then pulled back.
Almost like a man bun?
At the very top, he had this teeny tiny little either miniature ponytail or flipped inverted bun. And he's in uniform.
No.
And did you see that one?
I did not.
Okay, I'm going to send it to you right now so you can see exactly what the hell we're talking about.
It's not fake?
This was a no. I just sent you the picture, Chuck. You can look at that picture and you can tell me if you think that is fake or real. It looks like somebody standing on the side of the road with two CHP officers whipped out their cell phone camera and took a picture of this highway patrol man.
I thought that was totally photoshopped when I saw it. I was like, no fucking way. California Highway Patrol? No way.
So the message we got along with it, and I said, what? Because I replied, I said, what in the name of Ponch and John is this happy horse shit? And the message I got in return said that the listener has an Army buddy who recently left the CHP to fly helicopters. Woof, woof, woof. I like that. He's a former Black Hawk pilot in the Army, and now he flies for PG&E. And his response was, when he sent him this picture, was the CHP adjusted all of their grooming standards to gender neutral, parentheses, because they're idiots.
Wow.
They had no idea what their decision would lead. That their decision would lead to men looking absolutely amazing.
So let me just say that in police departments.
Let me finish the end of this response. He says,
okay.
I say, good for the officer for following policies and procedures correctly. And then that was the response. And then our listener said, apparently the new standards include dreads, braids, and other things. And so some of the people who thought it up were promoted by making the new policy. And some officers are pushing the limit. And the response I got was, they're pushing the limit by growing mohawks and mullets just to prove how ridiculous the policy is, or to push it as far as they possibly can. We will share this picture. You will see this picture if you want to see it. I will blur out the officer's face and any identifying information, because I don't know who this officer is, and I don't want to, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. And I don't know if he's doing this to prove a point or if he really is enjoying the relaxed grooming standards. But yeah, so here we are.
It's almost as stupid as those kids when they're growing up. Their parents gave them rat tails and shit. Like my mom tried doing that shit to me. So
I have always wondered, right? I've always legitimately wondered why, if women can wear their hair up in a French braid or a bun, why a long-haired man couldn't be in the military or a police officer and do the same, right?
Well, they just
Now the answer has always been, well, women want to, be able to maintain femininity when they're out of uniform, and men don't have that problem. So da 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 da. But I worked with a girl who literally wore big, stupid white Jersey Shore sunglasses and mint green nail polish in uniform with pigtail braids. And
eccentric.
I complained once about it being unprofessional looking, and I got the counseling from a buddy of mine that was like, "Hey, dude, leave that alone. You're barking up the wrong tree. You're just gonna piss off the lieutenant, who was a female, and you're gonna put a target on your back." So I let it go.
I had something similar happen to me.
So I thought,
guy.
yeah, I thought we'd put it out to the listeners. If you're seeing relaxed grooming standards like this at your department or at other departments, I know, Chuck, you have seen it at departments near where you're at. And I have yet to see it in person because I've been out of the game for so long. However, when I was leaving law enforcement, I did notice that some departments were pushing for men. They were transitioning to patrol guys would be allowed to wear beards or goatees.
Well, first of all, let me just say this. When you join the law enforcement agency or police department, it says, and most agencies say this is a quasi-military agency. Mm-hmm. We have policies and procedures, customs and courtesies. Okay. Mm-hmm. That of what we developed from the military. We've taken certain things from the military. Yeah. Right. And it's to keep us professional, to keep us squared away, so we look good, because when you have good officer presence and you look good, your uniform is nice and tight, you take care of yourself, you're groomed, less people want to fight with you. I can attest to that.
I can attest to that too.
It does work. I have seen soup sandwiches getting more use of forces. Then I'm like, holy shit, how do they keep getting the use of forces yet? And then they can't really fight. And then you got guys that are like me, who they look good in their uniforms most of the time. They take care of themselves. They shave their head, because I don't have hair, but so I shave my head.
No, you keep your hair groomed. You keep
right. Yeah. Even if I have a mustache, it's groomed. It's nice. It's right. I look presentable. I look squared away. Less people want to mess with me because they're like, that guy takes care of himself. I might get my ass kicked. But that guy over there that doesn't look like he tucked in his shirt today, looks like a soup sandwich. His uniform's wrinkly as shit. Yeah, that's the guy I want to fight. His hair's all floppy and nasty.
Because he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing.
Right, exactly. He doesn't look what is it? He doesn't look squared away. He doesn't look he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. Right. I have seen agencies, I'm not gonna say any names, but I have seen agencies adopt relaxed grooming standards for cultural differences or different cultures, such as
I've seen departments adopt turbans for Sikhs.
Right, but then it went as far as, for me seeing it, the LGBTQ community, where women who identify more as male, they are allowed to now shave the sides of their heads, and I saw this one female, and she was a cool chick, don't get me wrong, I had no issues with her, but she damn near had a mohawk, and she would spike her hair. And I'm like, a guy who had that haircut would have gotten written up and yelled at, but because she was a female and she was on the other side, she's batting for the other team, they left her alone. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then they started adopting more grooming standards, such as dreadlocks and things like that. And that was generally for more of like the black culture and things like that. But if someone other than of that culture was to do the exact same hairstyle, they would get written up. Right. So I think that was a precursor to all of this shit. So they probably looked at that, and then they were like, oh, well, we can't have that. So now we just need to open up to everybody and gender equality for all. And that's what that looks like to me, is now you have officers who are like, okay, check and mate, challenge accepted.
Right.
As Neil Patrick Harris would say in How I Met Your Mother, challenge accepted. And this shit is going to be legend. Wait for it. Dairy. Because that shit is wild. You can fucking do it as a man, but I thought it was fake when I first saw it. but
It looks legit to me.
That looks really shit.
That looks like a legit photo. So we will post the photo. If you guys are seeing this, we're going to have somebody on. I think we know who we're going to have on, but I don't want to say who because we haven't locked them in yet. But we will discuss, especially because this person takes, if we get him, takes great pride in their appearance and is squared away and has a tie in to some of this stuff directly.
Right.
But I mean, I don't dig on all the grooming standards. I don't necessarily agree. Like I was a victim of the tattoo policy controversy. We can get into that. We can definitely get into that. But ultimately, the question is there a line to be drawn, and do you draw the line somewhere, or is it a free for all? And if you can draw a line, then where do you draw it? And if you can't, then guess what? All bets are off.
I think what you said a bunch of times is when you start going that way, it's a slippery slope, and they've opened Pandora's box. And where is that line going to be drawn now? How do you quantify that line? How do you say one person can do this, but the other person can't? You can't. At that point, you can't. So now, if you're going to relax grooming standards, you need to do it for everybody. That goes for facial hair. That goes for tattoos. Because if you can have a man bun, but you can't show your tattoos, and you have tattoos, how is that fair? If you can't, if that person can have a man bun, mohawk, fucking braids as a man, things like that, why can't I have a goatee? Why can't I have a small beard? And and I've seen the whole excuse of, well, what if we have to don and clear our gas mask? Because that was what the military said. I'm like, okay, what about special operators? What about SEALs? What about Green Berets? What about Delta Force? What about all those spec op guys, those special operations capable dudes, those SOC guys and those JSOC dudes who rock beards so that they can go covert when they're overseas, when they're not in full kits, so that way they can do reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines to kind of like,
and they do it,
locals and things like that. And they do it. And they're special operations.
Right. When's the last time you saw a tier 1 guy shave when he was in country?
Never really. There's been times where they've had,
of course, obviously, but
but most of the time it's stateside when they ask them to shave, when it's something presentable like a ball or someone's
you're putting on your unit
or something like that.
Yeah.
So, where you're dressed blues, you're dressed whites or something like that, or you're dressed greens, or
a dog and pony show.
Alphas, or your Charlies, your blues, your good looking shit. You shave, right? Because you want to look good, feel good.
Exactly.
However, I think I might reach out to someone we had on the show as well. Also from the other cat and just give him a phone call. Who was the assistant chief of police for, at one point, the California Highway Patrol, and ask him to reach out to some people and ascertain if
a little confirmation
these standards are real. Because if that
and what they're seeing as a result of it,
yeah.
So,
I would love to know that.
But we had two, not grooming standards. We can joke around and make fun of it. We had two very serious situations. One in Oklahoma and one in Colorado. So let's just start with Denver police. Back in July, the body camera footage has been released, but back in July, there was a man in a crowded downtown bar area called Lodo, and I don't know what Lodo is short for. I didn't see it in the article, but it's like you got WeHo and NoHo and Soho and all these different hoes and does and lows, and so it's obviously Denver's got a bar district called that. Late bars are getting out, people are getting feeling their oats and being a little drunk, and one guy gets a little rowdy with some other guys out in front of a bar. And you watch the video, you watch the camera from the street, the surveillance camera, and then you watch the body camera footage. You can see this guy's, pushing and shoving. And so a couple of uniformed officers come over, and he sees that they're coming over. So he makes a U-turn and beats feet through the crowd. And it looks like there's like a taco truck or some sort of food trailer vendor on the street. He's got that in between him and the officers, and he's trying to make a beeline away from him and get away. So they go around the other side and confront him. As soon as they go to confront him, he reaches into his hoodie, pulls out a gun, And it takes him about 2 or 3 tries to get the gun to clear the hoodie, but he's grabbing it by the barrel. And again, you can see all of this if you watch frame by frame in the body camera. Grabs a hold of the gun, ditches the gun, and between the time he ditches the gun, I think it was between the time he ditches the gun or between the time he actually clears the gun out of the hoodie and the time the officers put rounds on him was about 5 frames, which translates to, if you figure there's 25 to 30 frames per second, depending on if it's 24 or 30 frames a second, depending on if it's film or video, it's about 30 frames a second. So you figure if it's 5 frames, 5 goes into 30 6 times. So it's 1/6 of a second.
A millisecond, yeah.
Yeah. 1/6 of a second between seeing the gun and putting rounds on the kid. And the unfortunate result is that Denver police wounded 6 bystanders, put rounds into 6 bystanders. That's just a lot to unpack here. Did you watch the video, Chuck?
No, I'm looking at it right now. I was reading the excerpt, but let me just say this. We said it before on the show. We said it other places, including Locker Room. The FBI has come up with facts that support this, that your brain takes 5 seconds to realize that someone's a threat or not, or that they're not a threat any longer. It takes about 5 seconds if you're starting to pull the trigger to finally realize, okay, the person's dropped the gun. That's why you see people when they fall, a couple more rounds sometimes hit them. Once they hit the ground is because the officer's brain hasn't had a chance to catch up with their actions. Now, I've been in a similar circumstance with good background where there wasn't a group of people or a bar behind the suspect. And we almost shot and killed someone with a gun. It was a man with a gun called. It was a female with a gun, but came out as a man with a gun because that's how the code comes out. And she was pointing a gun at passerbys and actually pointed a gun at a detective coming into work. And he put out a help call. He had a radio on him because he's a detective, so he carries that shit with him at all times. He put out a help call because as soon as he hits the city limits, he turns his radio on just in case he has to respond hot to a call when he's coming in. It's just how detectives roll.
It's safer that way. You turn that radio on when you get in the car, you get the air. If something happens, you can respond to it.
Especially when you work in a shitty city.
Yep.
So he puts it out and officers respond. Me and a couple other guys were first officers on scene. Suspect has a gun. Suspect pulls it out of her hoodie or pants or whatever the fuck. Right. And she is so lucky she didn't die because she was facing us and she pulled it out so fast, was ignoring commands. Put your hands up. Don't reach. Stop reaching. She reached in and immediately pulled it out. Would it have been a good shoot if we shot? Absolutely. However, all 3 of us at the same time saw the way she was holding it. And when I say shit, you get tunnel vision, shit slows down, but it's going really fast. This is what I mean. We saw her index finger and her thumb holding the grip of the fake 1911 in her hand, and then she immediately threw it to the ground. Holy shit, pucker factor central. And she was lucky she didn't get shot. She ended up getting arrested and slew charges got filed on her. But that's a fluke. That's a fucking fluke. When you have a suspect who has a gun, maybe a call came out, there's a suspect armed with a gun, you're already thinking he has a gun, right? So when that's already there, that fucking info is already there. And then the person's not listening and goes to pull it out. I'll go you one better. If you didn't even see the gun, right? You get a call of a person wearing a hoodie and jeans, pointing a gun, and also your informant or your reporting party in this case happens to be law enforcement, a detective. So their observations are more reliable than just the average schmuck on the street, right? And they put out the description. You show up, there is a suspect at that location matching that description, exactly where they said they were going to be. You don't see a gun, and you say, put your hands up, and they immediately reach down for where a gun would be hidden. You're going to shoot him. You can shoot him, right? We know that. We know this. You don't have to see the gun. You just have to perceive a threat to your life or someone else's. An imminent threat of serious bodily injury and or death.
Death or serious bodily injury. And California actually codifies what serious bodily injury is. And all of this getting shot qualifies, right?
And what imminent is and immediate.
Right. Exactly. So the fact that this woman came up with it between her thumb and her first finger, like it was, a stinky diaper, and the fact that you three had enough of a half of a breath pause to see it that way and not give her lead poisoning is a credit to your training and your mindset and your preparedness. And, I don't want to say lesser officers, but maybe officers that weren't as prepared, that weren't as street savvy, that maybe were a little greener, or maybe were a little more, complacent. Maybe she's dead. Maybe she's not alive at this point. She is the lucky one. She's the lucky one.
The slack on those triggers were taken in all the way.
Right.
And at 1 millisecond, 1/10 of the 1/6 of a second longer,
right,
there would have been multiple rounds downrange.
Yep.
It just
and I've been there. I've pulled the slack out of the trigger and been ready. So I'll tell you a funny story about that. It's my old man. He's been on the show, and I can't remember if we talked about this when he was on the show or not, but I remember growing up, and this story made a huge impression on me because my dad told it to me when I was very young. He said they were chasing a car up, burglary suspects up into the hills above Los Angeles, right? And the car pulls off to the side of the road. It's up in, if you guys don't know Los Angeles, there's like some foothills that kind of separate the downtown area and the beach area from the valley area, and there's these big hills with windy roads up there.
Pass.
Yeah. And so these guys were up there and they pulled off and foot bailed out of the car into the neighborhood in the pitch black. Right. So my dad grabs the shotgun. There's a bunch of cops on foot. They ditch their patrol cars. And as they're looking for these guys, the senior officer on scene looks at my old man, who's the younger officer at the time, and says, "Hey, Gandy, go back and stay with the cars in case they double back to their vehicle." Smart. So my old man goes back, and he's got the shotgun. He gets back to where the cars are, and guess what? There's a guy back at the cars, and he is walking towards the suspect vehicle. So my dad says, "Hey, turn around, freeze, put your hands up, blah, 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 blah." And the guy doesn't, keeps walking towards my dad. And my dad, racks the shotgun, points it at him, and says, "Stop, don't come any closer, blah, 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 blah." The guy doesn't do anything except keep walking towards my old man. And my old man's, he's not presenting a weapon. He's not reaching for anything, but he just keeps advancing on it. The guy got to the point where the barrel of the shotgun was practically in his stomach, and my dad's finger was on the trigger. And if you've ever held and fired a 12-gauge shotgun, once you rack that thing, there is no slack in the trigger.
No, it's very, very hairy.
It's like a sneeze is too much to set it off, And
you can bump fire him.
Yeah. So this guy was not the suspect, wasn't even associated with the suspect. He had heard the commotion and come outside to see what was going on. And for some reason, he just didn't comprehend that my dad was giving him the orders he was giving him. But my dad had, the good sense not to blow a hole in the stomach of a man who was just too stupid to follow instructions.
Oh, yeah, that'd been bad.
Right. Now, taking that half a second that you guys did, taking the half a second my dad did, taking the half a second I've taken when I've had my gun multiple times, had the slack pulled out of the trigger. Sometimes that's going to be a half second too long, but a lot of times it's going to save yourself from a world of hurt. So that's the first issue, is that did they have the authority to shoot this dude for whipping this gun out? Absolutely. We're not debating that. And I also want to talk about, I reached out to a lieutenant friend of mine, and he was one of the best street cops I ever worked with now, who just happens to have proven that, the system sometimes works correctly by getting promoted to lieutenant. And we talked about it. And he said, this is a shit no-win situation. And it really is. Because let's face it, like, they had the authority to shoot him. Mm-hmm. And this guy could have stopped what was going to happen to him very simply. A, when the cops came over to talk to him, he should have just stopped.
Yes.
Right. B, he didn't have to try and escape. C, when he did realize that he was about to get pinched, what does this dumb shit do? He reaches into his waistband to get the gun. Okay, I'm going to take any potential bad guys listening to the show to Bad Guy School 101 for a minute. Okay, if you have a gun on you and the cops are coming to talk to you, put your fucking hands up and don't reach for the gun. Just take the gun charge rather than get ventilated, because throwing the gun away isn't going to prevent you from taking a gun charge.
You're still going to get it, bud.
You're still going to get the gun charge, but you're playing Russian roulette at that point, that by trying to get rid of that gun, you're going to get ventilated. If you had put your hands up and said, okay, I give up. There's a gun in my waistband. Don't shoot. And then at that point complied with every single order that they gave you,
right,
in the most slow and careful way possible, they wouldn't have to open fire because they wouldn't perceive your gun as a threat. And I don't, there's so many states that are allowing constitutional carry nowadays. I mean, if you are carrying a gun in constitutional carry, and for example, in Colorado, anybody who is 21 years old and permitted to legally possess a handgun pursuant to federal and state laws has the authority to carry the handgun as a person who holds a permit. So that guy may not have even taken a gun charge.
Right.
Why did he have the gun? I don't know.
And I got to say this, that suspects' actions are going to dictate the police actions. And I read the article that you sent, and it seems like it's Denver's Post. It seems like it's a very liberal, one-sided anti-police column, just something similar to like the LA Times.
Yeah, it's hard to find anything.
They're so biased against the police. However, if that suspect never would have reached anybody, complied, no one would have got shot. It's not like the cops are out there to shoot. And then, if you are a bystander watching something and cops have guns drawn, get the fuck out of the way. Move. Mm-hmm. Don't just sit there and stare and stand behind them and looking at the cops' guns like, oh, this is wild.
And don't whip out your fucking phone and film it, you dumb shit. Get the fuck out of the way.
Because we, as police officers, are trained to acknowledge background, but sometimes the risk is something that we have to take, and we hope we don't hit anybody if we kind of have a shitty background, because if that person does present a weapon and starts shooting at us, they can kill more people. And sometimes it happens in shitty situations. Sometimes happens when you have shit background. People get innocent bystanders sometimes get hurt, and it's a really shitty thing, but it's not the police officer's fault. Most of the time, it's the suspect's fault, because if that suspect never would have reached for the gun, they never would have gotten shot. Then the people behind them never would have got shot. There has been numerous incidents that we've seen in California, because I can speak to California, with the Los Angeles Police Department. The latest one was in the H&M, I think it was H&M, where some female got shot in a dressing room because an AR round went through a fucking wall. That is sad, but they had good background. They didn't know that someone was in the fitting room. And they
in this case, they have terrible backdrop. They have a terrible backdrop.
It's horrible. It's a fucking bar.
And like there is something to be said for how much consideration did they have for their backdrop. And I could see officers, I could honestly see the potential for them getting administratively disciplined, if maybe not charged with anything, but I could see officers getting administratively disciplined for violating policy if in any of their testimony, any of them say, well, I didn't even think about the backdrop. Like if you're supposed to, right. All I saw was the guy in the gun. If you don't train, if you don't prepare your mind, if you don't do what Chuck and I were talking about, where you I've said it so many times, I've been in 4,000 shootings. The first 3,999 of them were in my head. If you don't mentally prepare yourself for that moment, and if you don't give yourself the skills to clear that tunnel vision and be able to evaluate those situations in a hot sixth of a second, the one of the first range rules is be aware of your target and what's beyond it,
which is backdrop. Your background, background, whatever.
Same
thing.
But
you're gonna have people be like, "Well, they could have waited a little bit longer." Okay, let's say they wait.
Sure.
Right? And this is a no-win situation. Let me just say this right now. This is a shit situation. It's a really shitty situation, especially for those officers.
What do you do with shitty situations? You debrief them and try to learn.
Yeah, because now they have to live with this. But
yes.
if they would have waited, you people, oh, they should have waited a little bit longer. Okay, let's say they wait. Let's say the situation changes. They wait a little bit longer because they're like, fuck, background. My backdrop is shit. It's a bar. There's people out. Suspect pulls out the gun, starts shooting at the officers, and then kills an innocent bystander across the street.
Or turns into an active shooter.
Or it turns into an active shooter and more people get shot. Cops get shot. More innocent civilian bystanders get shot. And then let's say the suspect never even gets shot and he just gives up. Or he gets ventilated and he dies.
Then the question is, why didn't they shoot him?
People have been shot. This is the situations that run through an officer's head in a split second, and they have to make a split second decision to save their lives and other people's lives and take the suspect down and neutralize the threat. Not kill him.
Correct.
Neutralize the threat.
Correct.
Death is a byproduct of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
If that's how the threat gets neutralized, that's how the threat gets neutralized. I was not taught to shoot to kill. I was taught to shoot to stop.
Stop the threat.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's a shitty situation. There's a fucking bar. Yep. You know, it's a really shit situation. Can I say the officers could have waited longer? Well, me watching the video, yeah, I could have, because the suspect threw the gun. However, it's totally different when you're there. I can tell you that from firsthand experience. Tom can tell you that. It's so much different when you're there. So to try to get in the officer's mindset is so much different. I probably have been in one of those situations. Would I have shot? Maybe. There's a good chance I could have. Yeah. I don't know. I wasn't there. And I can't say that every situation I get in is going to be like the one where I saw that person's hand. That was a fluke. Every situation is not the same. Every situation is different. Your eye sees something different. Your brain sees something different. And, you know, your body camera sees something different. You know, it's shitty situations. And this is one of them. And unfortunately, some bystanders got shot. It's happened before with other agencies. It's going to happen again, unfortunately, especially when suspects fire at officers and there's an officer involved shooting, and then an innocent bystander gets shot. You know,
but again, all this is dictated by a bad guy doing bad guy shit, or if he a dumbass doing dumbass shit. If he'd have just complied, again, wouldn't even have taken a gun charge in Colorado probably, unless he was a prohibited person.
Right. This is a shit situation. Like, why would you do that? And in my eyes, suspects to blame.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Ultimately, this idiot started the ruckus, and let he who fucketh around be the first to findeth out. Like, unfortunately, these 6 people were in the wrong place at the wrong time when somebody started some stupid shit, and he had to get dealt with by the popo, and they ventilated him. And unfortunately, through the circumstances, 6 other people were struck. Luckily, none of them were killed. Right. Luckily, none of those innocent bystanders were killed. But you guys got to understand that for those of you in law enforcement, it's a shitty situation. And sometimes shitty situations are just going to happen. And you need, like, I'll give you one right now. If you don't talk to your partners, whether it's a car partner or whether it's a beat partner or whether it's a shift partner, if you don't talk to them on a regular basis about what your fucking plan is for being taken hostage, whether you get taken by the bad guy and your partner has to point a gun at you, or whether your partner gets taken by the bad guy and you have to point a gun at your partner. If you don't talk about those situations, you're doing yourself and your partner a disservice. If you don't talk about, hey, which one of us is the better shot? If we end up in a shitty situation and one of us is going to have to use lethal force, like, we should have somebody assigned to taser. We should have somebody assigned to mugger. You know, who's the best hands-on guy? Well, maybe he's the mugger. Who's the best shot? Maybe he's the freaking lethal force option. These are things you should talk about. You don't just don't go out there willy-nilly.
Yeah, you always have a plan. Thing. Yeah. Talk to your partners. Always have a plan.
And for those of you not on the job, this is the unfortunate side effect of also a society that has the mentality of fuck the cops. We can do violence. We can take on the cops. We can challenge them. Now you're creating cops that are hyper vigilant now because there is a freaking, nobody has respect for him. And there's a boogeyman trying to kill him waiting around every corner. They don't know what this guy is. They don't know if he's just some drunk from the bar or if he's some freaking cop hating asshole just waiting for his opportunity to kill the first cop he can. They don't know.
Right. Shitty situation.
Well, and from one shitty situation to another.
That Want me to do this
I
one?
would argue, yeah, I would argue that this one probably has more lessons to learn from the area of taking responsibility for your shit and do your job properly than I would. It's again a shitty situation, but one that probably had more ways to be avoided than not.
Yeah. And it
Woof.
goes, Oklahoma woman slips out of cuffs, shoots man and deputy from back of police cruiser. The video shows. We watched the video. And
We did.
man, it's crazy. And you know what? I was like, man, why didn't they see her fucking around in the car? And then it shows to the officer's view of dealing with the person's reporting. Their back windows and their windows of their vehicle, their police car is tinted like a motherfucker, so they couldn't see anything. And basically, the video shows a female in the back slipping her cuffs, which happens, and obtaining the urban police rifle, M16, AR-15, whatever you want to call it, gets it from the front seat. I guess there was no cage of the vehicle because there's only the rear-facing camera that shows the where the suspect sits.
Yeah, I couldn't tell. There is a cage, right? There is a cage.
I don't think there was a cage. There was only a cage from the back where the back hatch is where the gear is stored.
Well,
so I'm assuming.
That's what but she like reached through like the cage there. There was an opening where she was able to reach around. Because I saw part of the video where she was able to reach around and so that's what I couldn't figure out did she get it from the back or did she get it like?
No, she got it from the front because you see the back the whole time, and you watch her go over where the driver passenger would sit, where we normally keep our rifles in the center console area because we don't have a center console in police cars. It's your rifle or your shotgun, or if you shotgun and beanbag, if your agency has a beanbag, you'll either have a rifle or two shotguns up there, or a rifle and a shotgun. And she gets it. Now, most of the times those they're locked. They should be locked. And there's a special code that you have to hit on your light bar area where your whale and chirp and all that shit is, and your code 3 equipment. There's a special code.
There's a secret.
There's a button as a passenger on the floor sometimes. It depends. And I think they've gone away with that because, of the lack of security. And then there is also a key in case everything fails. You have a key where you can undo it. Who knows? It didn't look like it was secured. And I've seen agencies and coppers who get complacent and they're like, well, I'm just going to leave it there because, it's the whole thing of, well, I'm going to patrol without my seatbelt because it's easier for me to bail out of the car. Okay. I get that.
Right.
But here's the thing. You can't be creating shortcuts in your car for it to easily get out, to get some equipment out or whatever. You need to train your body to keep it secured. And in those stressful situations, okay, I got to hit this beep, beep. And it's just half a second where you're able to punch in the code. And it's not a crazy long code. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Because a lot of this agencies run the same Axion equipment or code 3 equipment. Not going to give you that, but it pops you open within half of a second and you can take it out real quick. And sometimes the rifle ones are a little bit more where you have to lift up a lever and shit like that. Maybe he didn't put it in correctly. I don't fucking know. It's a shitty situation that could have been prevented, I think, because me being a police officer and having this equipment in my vehicle, I know for a fact how it's secured. I know that if it's secured properly, ain't no one getting that son of a bitch out. You could pull on it. You might be able to pull the trigger and shoot around through the top of the roof and destroy the light bar, but you ain't going to be getting it out to shoot anybody. So she gets it out. She racks it. She figures out how to work it.
And by the way, do you know what she's in the car for?
It looked to be
5150.
Yeah, like they're
taking her for a mental health evaluation.
Yeah, because she showed up. She didn't want any water. Some random chick, I guess, showed up at someone's house, and they call and like, she's acting crazy. She won't take water. It looks like meth-induced psychosis because she looks tweaky as shit. And then is able to arm herself with a M16 and fire rounds out of the back of the police cruiser. Hits a civilian in the chest, 10-9 ring area. If you know anything about silhouette, so like right in the moneymaker.
Yeah, doesn't it graze the officer's head too?
It grazes the officer in the head. It's crazy because I only heard, and my ears could have been playing tricks on me. I only heard one shot at first, and then a bunch more ring out. But when the officer takes around to the head and the civilian takes around to the chest, two people are hit at the same time. So maybe she mashed it real quick and shot 2 rounds, and you only hear one big loud bang because that can happen. Who knows? But they both got shot, and that's what matters. They bail, they go around another police vehicle and get cover, and then they wait until she gives up because now you have a barricaded suspect.
Okay, so this says she was, because I'm watching her get it out. It says after slipping her cuffs, she reached through the partition to the front seat and accessed a switch to open a gun locker. So,
wow, you need to change your equipment for sure.
I mean, there was a design flaw up in this piece. If somebody can access, first of all, do you have, if your department has the unlock button clearly marked on your gear, maybe it's time to rethink that.
Yeah, use a code. Use a 2-button code.
I'm not saying that that's what they had. I'm just saying if your department has the gun lock button marked, right? Like I'll say I've seen cars where it wasn't necessarily clearly marked, but anyone with half a brain cell in their head looking at those buttons might be able to figure out what that initials or abbreviation was for. And I won't say what, I don't want to, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Ours
if you
didn't have
see
anything.
neutral, yeah.
Ours was
So there you go.
It was rubbed off.
But here's another thing. These gun locks, typically, some of them have like a metal clamp. Some of them have like a ratchet handcuff style. But ultimately, if the electronic lock fails and you need the gun, they can still be opened with a key manually. And I kept my key on my key ring on my belt. Period. End of story.
Yep.
I have seen people that leave the key in the lock. And
I have too. No, don't do that. Don't do that. And then this is I saw that in a different agency that I worked. There was a key, and then there was also a switch on the floor. And I don't know if they still do that.
The switch on the floor is very old school.
Very old school. And then in my agency, we didn't have a switch on the floor because I looked for it because my dad's agency had one. Yeah. And then I learned how to they taught me how to do it from the only way to do it other than a key, which is a code you would have to put in, and it's not marked. You're like, these are the buttons, because we don't want people to know. And also, it's something that was taught to me very early on. If you ever have a suspect in the backseat, don't show them, like, change the comments of the call. It's change the screen, because you don't want them to read that, because it could rile them up. They could learn information. They can learn sensitive information like caller's name or number or something like that. Because
darken your screen.
Transients, some of these suspects are just switch it off. Change to a different screen or close your laptop.
Yep.
Because you don't need to know that. All you can do everything over the air. Hey, show me transporting, your time, my miles.
Don't think they're not reading that shit.
Yeah, and because they do read it. Because I've had it.
Read it.
I've had it popped up for a second. I didn't get a chance to change. And they're like, oh, so this person called. I'm like, oh, shit. And that was when I was new. And so you switch that off. And then if you're going to do anything that's going to get any type of sensitive information or equipment out, you wait until that suspect isn't looking, and then you do it. You don't show them how to do it, because they will show all of their buddies, because they are like mini savants when it comes to like escaping police custody, learning.
Oh, they're paying attention.
They do. And to think that they won't, like, oh, it's just a stupid suspect. No, dude. Like, they learn and they practice this shit in prison. The Folsom roll. That's why you don't see people, putting their hands on cars anymore when they do the frisk. They put their hands.
There is no more up against the wall and spread them.
Exactly, because they learned how to do the Folsom roll. Also, the 3 retention holsters, where you have to do 3 different things to get your gun out. They've also learned how to unlock those, and they train that shit in prison. They teach the other suspects
taking apart the Beretta.
Yeah,
taking apart. So, everybody who saw Lethal Weapon 4 saw the move that Jet Li does and was like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing." It's not that amazing when you realize that inmates have been training with soap guns and wood guns and things that they create in the crafting area that they use to practice this move to do exactly that, to take the gun apart, because they figured out a flaw in the system. Because if they spent half as much time on an actual fucking job as they do on researching how to commit crimes and defeat the police, they could actually make something of themselves.
Yeah. And, I would say this. One, I don't know why they didn't shoot back. Maybe it was because that was the police car. Maybe they didn't know exactly where the rounds were coming, but they then figured it out. Did she slip her cuffs? 2, chicks can slip cuffs. They have small, dainty little wrists. And even when you're on the last ratchet on a handcuff, they can slip it. I've seen it. I've seen officers do it that are females that wanted to show, hey, you got to be careful with females. They can slip cuffs. If you think her wrists are too small for a handcuff, still use the handcuff. Take your fucking hobble and tie her shit together. That is one more thing that you
keep zip ties
out of. Keep zip ties. Those work too. Flexi cuffs are really good. If you have a female, be like, hey, watch her in the back, make sure she can't get to anything. Hey, I need flexi cuffs. Get me some zip ties, something. If your agency doesn't have flexi cuffs, order some yourself. I don't know, but know that females can slip cuffs very easily. They don't have to break a thumb. All they do is twist their shit and pull out because their hands are so small. Females by design, and not all, but most females by design have very small wrists and very small hands.
Right. And that don't fall for that whole, these are too tight on my wrists. Yeah. Well, some people have the ability to collapse that hand smaller than their wrist.
The rule of thumb is one finger tip in a cuff. You're good. If you can fit your whole fucking finger in there, they can get out of it. I've seen girls get out. I'm like, don't you get out. I know you can get out. Don't you get out. You get out. We're going to have a fucking problem. I've even tied my hobble onto their arms. I was like, she's going to get out. And there's a way you can do it that can keep them in a little bit longer. If they start to you can tell they're starting to squirm or whatever. And you're like, there she's going to get out. But in most cases, you don't have an M16 readily accessible and unlocked or the shit there to unlock it very easily. 2, complacency. Complacency is the number one, or 3, complacency is the number one thing that are going to get officers killed or hurt or injured. And this is a prime example, a clear example of complacency. You left either a key in, you didn't watch her, you didn't have, the rule of thumb is always have an officer watching a suspect because they can do crazy shit. If you didn't search them properly, they can arm themselves with a gun or a knife, and then you open up that back and they shoot.
Or they have a key.
Or they have a key. So you need to keep.
How many suspects have you seen that have a freaking handcuff key on their key ring or something like that? I mean, they've seen it. They keep it. They keep keys. They're not stupid. They get it.
Or weapons like guns, knives. And you're like, I did a pat down. Here's the thing. Complacency. Maybe you didn't do a good enough pat down. Maybe you handed that off and you're another officer who just got the body. And you're like, oh, that pat down's been done. Every time a prisoner or a suspect changes hands, you should be doing a pat down search, because what if the officer missed something? Or what if they forgot to do it? What if they just hooked them up real quick and threw them in the back?
Famous case.
Have weapons and shit.
Famous case of that. The guy, I don't, if you haven't seen the video, it's on the internet. It's been on the internet for years. Guy in an police interrogation room, about to be interrogated by the police, asks for a bottle of water. Detective walks out to get him the bottle of water, walks back in, hands him the bottle of water. Guy takes a big swig out of the water bottle as the detective goes to get something else. And then while the detective's out of the room, after he takes a swig of the water bottle, he reaches into his waistband, pulls a full-size 5-inch 1911 out of his waistband, blows his own brains out in the interrogation room. And the police come running back in and go, oh my God, nobody shook him. Nobody searched him. And the bottom line is that guy, famously, the after action report on the situation, that guy had been in 3 different agencies' hands. He had started off with one arresting agency, been handed off to a second agency, and ultimately handed off to a third agency, who then took him to the station to interrogate him. And every single agency assumed that the agency before them had searched him. So he was able to make it all the way into a police interrogation room, where he was then unhandcuffed and given a bottle of water and left alone in an interrogation room. They're lucky he decided to blow his own brains out instead of those detectives. It happens. Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, I worked as a training instructor for a state school in California that did advanced officer safety and field tactics. And once a month we would do these courses. And part of the courses was, an advanced simmunitions course where we would, work on traffic stops and encountering suspects in the field and all that kind of stuff. One of the scenarios, I was the suspect, and I would take a little 5-shot snub nose 38 loaded with simmunitions, and I would hide it somewhere on my body that suspects tend to hide guns. And I hid it numerous different places. We'll always hide it at different places. And a lot of times what would happen is the police officers would put me in the back of the car, and my instructions per the class curriculum were, if the officers put you in the back of the patrol car without finding your snub nose revolver, you are then allowed to slip your cuffs, get out of the car, and shoot them. So we would simulate being handcuffed, and we would tell them if you tell the suspect he's handcuffed, you can safely figure that he's handcuffed, but you should still follow all your proper safety procedures. One of those is keep your eyes on the suspect, even though they're handcuffed in the back of the car. If they took their eyes off me and they didn't search me properly, I'd get out and I'd shoot them in the back. And they'd go, "That's no fair. You cheated." And I'd say, "How did I cheat?" And they would always claim that I didn't have the gun on me and that we'd hidden it in the car or something like that. And I would show them exactly where I had it. And it wasn't every time, but it was enough times that people were like, "Holy shit." And very few cops would be like, "You know what? That's my bad. I screwed up. I didn't find it. I did a bad search."
Like in the sock, or they don't do a quick enough search, or they do too quick of a search.
You hide that shit down far enough in it. They sweep the one side, they sweep the other side. They never cross over the middle plane of the small of your back. They never cross over around the crotch area. There's areas where we get lazy and we don't thoroughly search. And if you know where those areas are, you can hide a gun and get away with it.
Or coppers don't like grabbing a handful of
junk. Yeah.
I always did. I didn't like it, but I always did it because we did the same thing in our academy. We would have suspects who would, it was set up this way, where they would put a gun on them and we would search. If we didn't find it, they would turn around and shoot us. So I didn't want to be that guy in the field.
Ooh.
Yeah, I definitely didn't want to get shot, and I definitely didn't want them to have dope on them or anything and go to jail. And then, you look stupid. So I would always search them, do a thorough search. If I thought I may have missed something or went too fast, search him again, or do a quick pat down, tell the other guy he needs to be searched again. I just quick pat down, threw him in the back of the car, fucking search him again, and shit like that happens. But I would always grab them there and they're like, "Oh, what, man? What are you doing? Why are you grabbing my junk?" I'm like, "What, are you hiding something in there? Because I'm going to go deeper. Stop squirming. Let me grab, because if you're squirming, that tells me one of two things. You're hiding something or you just feel uncomfortable. But more chances you're hiding something. So I'm going to grab it. I don't like doing it, but I'm going to grab. And if you keep squirming or pulling away from me, I'm going to keep doing it until I can safely clear that area." And it's happened too many times. And the funny thing is that my agency, we used to hide fake little like orange guns, or a fake like BB gun or something in the car with our new probationers. Hey, you put in there prior in the morning, exactly what vehicle you get, you throw the keys to your boot and you're like, "Hey, we're going to be, rolling out, get the car ready." And so they go and get the car ready, and they're supposed to clear it. Every officer every day is supposed to look under the seats, shine the light to make sure there's no dope in the back seat, make sure there's no dope in the front seat, make sure there's no items. If there's any,
you need to be able to testify that there was nothing in that car when you started your shift.
Right. And if there is, you have to do a property report, and you got to book it. And far too many times there were probationers finding it and throwing it out like fake dope, not finding the gun.
Yeah.
Or if they found it and they grabbed it, like, "Hey, there was a gun in the back. I got it. Oh shit. Okay, good." And then like you pass the test, but they wouldn't either find the gun or they'd throw the dope out, which is a big fucking no-no.
Yeah, huge no-no.
And
it's an integrity issue.
Right. And they got to a point where too many P1s were probationary officers were fucking it up. They weren't finding the dope, or they were throwing the dope out, or they weren't finding the gun. And so they said the test was entrapment. Right. And then their ratings were reflecting like, "Hey, there was an unsatisfactory, test today. I tested him to see if he would or she would clear the car before shift. They failed to do so. This is what happened. Unsatisfactory. You're going to go have to talk to a supervisor about why." And you get too many of those, you can actually get fucking shit canned on probation, you can get booted during your rating period.
Absolutely.
Because you're an at-will employee. You fart wrong, you can get fired. And that's how we were all brought on. And then all of a sudden the shift of power changed. And they're like, "Hey guys, we got to stop doing this because it's basically like entrapment. Like these coppers are, they feel like they're being targeted or singled out." Like, no, some training officers like to do it and some don't. But the ones that do, if you're complacent, which it shows you, complacency can kill or get you in trouble or get you hurt. You can't be complacent. You always have to, check your shit. You can't just think, "Oh, someone else did it." You can't just think, "Oh, well, they're handcuffed, they're good, and they're in the back seat, it's locked." No, because as we've seen time and time again, it can happen.
And I'll tell you, I had a rule, and maybe you guys have the same rule. Maybe you guys want to adopt this rule, but everybody knew, and I wasn't offending anybody because I did it to everybody. If I was handing off a prisoner, if I was handing off somebody that was handcuffed, if I was handing off somebody that wasn't handcuffed, whoever I handed him to, I said, he's clean. Go ahead and search him if you want. Right. And if somebody was handing somebody to me, I always searched them. And I said, hey, I'm just going to search him again real quick. I just do that with everybody. And the reason I did it with everybody was A, for my own safety and peace of mind, but also B, because I wasn't going to say to, cop A, I trust you, but I don't trust cop B to do their job. The bottom line is it wasn't about trust, right? It wasn't like, oh, I don't trust him to do his job. It was, I know that shit happens and stuff gets missed and anyone can do it. So if you hand me somebody, everybody knew, you hand me somebody, I'm going to search them. I hand you somebody, I'm going to tell you they're clean, but I'm going to tell you it's okay to, it doesn't bother me if you search them again. And part of that was me encouraging them. Please look for my mistakes. Don't let me get somebody hurt because I missed something.
Because even the most experienced officer can fucking miss something.
Yep.
Good example. Arrested a suspect for a non-dope crime. Searched the suspect to the point where pulled pockets out. There was a fucking dime bag of meth. I fucking missed it in basketball shorts. So what happened is the little fucking bag was in one of those little tiny, like,
little jewelry bag
or half inch or quarter inch fucking bag, half inch bag by half inch bag, very fucking tiny, had such a small amount of meth in it, but it doesn't matter. It's still contraband, was in the pocket. When I pulled the fucking pocket, I couldn't feel it on a pat down because, we wear gloves and stuff like latex gloves because we don't want heebie jeebies on us.
Right.
Couldn't feel it. Then pull the pockets out, pull all the coins and shit out. The fucking meth bag was under a piece of fabric. When you pulled it out hard, it didn't completely come out. Like, it looked like it was all the way out, but that little fucking baggie was still stuck in there. And even myself, one thing I've ever fucking missed in a pat down was that little tiny fucking piece of dope. I felt so stupid when I had someone transport my body to the jail and they're like, hey dude, what the fuck? And I was like, oh shit, really? Like, what the fuck? And it was completely like off brand for me because I've never missed shit. But it just goes to show you that even the most experienced officer can miss something. That's why you have partners. That's why you have partners always double checking your shit. That's why you have a partner. Hey man, will you read my report? Will you double check it? Can you make sure I dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's? Because sometimes you get fatigued. Sometimes you get tired. Sometimes shit just happens and you fucking miss something. And anyone could have missed that, but it was my fault. I fucking missed it. I should have looked more thoroughly. And you know what? I fucking, every time after that, I made sure I flipped it up and down. I shook it. Everything to make sure that there was no dope on that person. And then if there was a dope arrest, I made sure that, the coffin squat, like, hey, like really fucking look there, like pop down. Like, I'm not afraid of balls or buttholes because they could bring contraband that prison won't. They could bring a knife in and it's going to be poking out. And if I see it, like, I gotta tell someone and we got to get a warrant and then we got to extract it. You have to be uncomfortable you have to be comfortable with the uncomfortable situations. You've got to make sure that you don't have complacency, and you have to always have someone double check your shit because there's an off chance you miss something. And
there isn't, take your ego out of it.
Yeah.
Everybody
that shit at the door.
Get rid of your ego, because guess what? Everybody can miss it. You can catch somebody's mistake just as easily as they can catch yours. So, well, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned on this one. And since we don't have a guest, Chuck, I think you have our dedication for this week, do you not?
Yes. So there was a wildland firefighter who was killed in the Rum Creek fire.
It's up in Oregon.
The state officials identified the wildland firefighter killed Thursday as 25-year-old Logan Taylor of Talent. Taylor was critically injured after being struck by a tree on the Rum Creek fire, located north of Gallus and above the Rogue River in southwest Oregon. Taylor is the second wildland firefighter killed this month and the fourth in Oregon since 2020. Rescue teams deployed a helicopter and personnel to the fire and airlifted Taylor to Ascente Rogue Regional Medical Center in Medford, where Taylor succumbed to his injuries. According to a news release from the Oregon Department of Forestry, we are extremely saddened by the passing of Logan Taylor. Tyler McCarty, ODF, Southwest Oregon District Forest, said, "This loss is deeply felt by our ODF family. and throughout the wildland fire community as a whole. ODF and our partners are committed to learning from this accident and to do everything we can to reduce the risk of similar incidents occurring in the future. Also on Thursday, on a separate fire in Jackson County, a firefighter was removed from the line after suffering a heart-related illness. And these are just sad. It's sad.
Terrible. Take care of your fitness. I mean, also, and I mean, let's face it, if you've had the vaccine, start watching out for heart-related issues, because I'm going to tell you what, it's the evidence is mounting that people who have taken the vaccine are developing heart-related issues that they would not have been expected to develop. Let's put it that way. I'm not saying the two are related. I'm just saying that, this was a situation where they rushed to get a vaccine to save people's lives or to do what they thought was best. Regardless of, I'll keep my personal feelings out of it and just say they felt like they were doing what was best, supposedly. And a lot of people had the vaccine. I know people that have taken the vaccine and been just fine, but there's also been a lot of people that have suffered heart-related incidents as a result of it. I mean, Chuck, you had to take it.
Yeah. And my cardiologist specifically said, and this is from a cardiologist, a board-certified cardiologist, goes, hey, you got to get it. I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, I got to do the one and done Johnson, whatever the fuck it's called, whatever. And he was like, have you had COVID before? I was like, yeah, twice. He goes, oh, don't get it. And I'm like, why? He's like, I don't want to see you back on my table. Am I really? He's like, yeah, you're at a higher risk of any heart-related episodes. You could develop myocarditis. You could develop some sort of fucking heart arrhythmia or some crazy shit. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he's like, it's not good. Yeah. And he goes, it's rare, but it can happen. He goes, be careful. And I was like, all right. And he goes, honestly, having natural immunity and already having COVID twice, you are more protected than anybody else, realistically. And he even told me how many times he's had it. He's had 5, and he's like, I'm done, because every time I get one of these injections, I get sicker for longer. And that's after getting it. And he's like, it's getting worse. And he's like, I'm honestly afraid to get my next dose. He goes, because the last one I was down for 7 days for symptoms of the injection. He goes, I don't think my body can do it. He's like, I'm an older gentleman. I just don't think my body can do it. He goes, I don't think you should have to do it. I think your natural immunity should be plenty.
Yeah. So let's say it this way. Old or young, if you've had COVID, or especially if you've had the vaccine, just pay attention to your heart and maybe start getting things checked out. Don't dismiss things that in 2018 you'd have been like, oh, it's fine. Well, now it's 2022 and it could not be fine. So get shit checked out. Especially
for 2 weeks after that injection.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we're getting closer to releasing some new shit, right, Chuck? And I know you're going to take us home.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening. If you like today's podcast, please go follow us on our Instagram at war_stories_official and our Facebook at War Stories Podcast. If you already follow us and share our posts and our info, you can also go to the link in our bio on Instagram and Facebook to reach all of our socials, our media, and our website. Our podcast is on all major podcast streaming platforms, as well as on YouTube. If you want to support us, please go to our website at www.warstoriesofficial.com and grab some gear. We still have some stuff left, and we're going to be coming out with some hats. And when those run out, it'll all be pre-orders, and we're going to be coming out with some tanks. It's still hot where I'm at, still like 110 degrees. So hopefully where you guys are at, you can still be able to get them. They'll be pretty inexpensive. And if you want to be featured on our show or think you have a story, please go to booking.warstories@gmail.com. Again, that's booking.warstories@gmail.com and send me your story and I can get you booked. We are looking for law enforcement, corrections, dispatchers, fire, medics, and veterans. If you have a friend who you think would be a great fit, let them know about us and give them our booking email. And you can also send me their info, but please at least talk to them about it before I send an email or a phone call or a text or something, because that would greatly appreciate. It would help me, because they're gonna be like, who is this weirdo? If they've never heard about us and I'm just calling them out of the blue, it's kind of weird. So let them know about us. Be like, hey, expect a phone call. I told them about you. I think you'd be a great fit. If they implicitly say no, tell them no. Let us know, please, so we don't get a weird conversation, make it awkward. But please let them know about us. Give them our info. give us their info. If you've already been featured on the show and you want to come back on the show, please reach back out to me via email at booking.warstories@gmail.com and just be like, hey, I want to come back on. I have some more stories, and we'll get you booked. I already have 2 or 3 people lined up, so let's get some more.
Yeah. And until our next episode, come home with your shield or on it.